that if we ran into something that we didn't remember to list or we omitted, that we would not be able to act on it. So these policies are very, very broad. In section 5.1, the employee qualifications and duties. Employees have a duty to perform their jobs responsibly and in a conscientious manner. In addition to any specific job requirements set forth in job descriptions or elsewhere, employees are expected to meet the following general performance and service standards. And I'm not going to go through all of these because you've had them for quite some time, but we are going to look at just a couple of them. The first is D, and that is pretty much just a restatement of what I just read to you, that employees are required to obey all laws, board policies, supervisory directives, and are expected to follow the Alabama Educator Code of Ethics. I had to ask Ms. Gully, I said, where is that? And she told me you go to ethics.alabama.gov. K in that section is new. Employees shall promptly disclose to the board any fact that would disqualify them from employment or that limits their ability to perform their essential job functions, to permit an informed evaluation of the circumstances and in order to protect the school system and the students it serves. Employees are required to report to the superintendent in writing, by telephone, or in person within 72 hours any of the following: a felony charge, indictment, complaint, conviction, or plea agreement, or 2, a misdemeanor charge, indictment, complaint, conviction, or plea agreement involving drugs or moral turpitude. 5.12, we require background checks and that all employees will have a suitable status. So that pretty much covers anything new or anything that you might have had a question, but if you do have a question about something, I'll be glad to try to answer that.
Is the background checks section new?
It is not.
Okay, because we were not complying with that.
I know.
So what is, I mean,
I think that's why we went over it,
okay.
that we want to reiterate that this is something that we will do.
Okay.
And we are in compliance with that now, and I think when we were monitored for that, it went back maybe 15 years or so, or maybe a little bit, you know, it was a good distance back, so we brought all of that into compliance with the people who did not have their background checked, but it is a requirement, and so we're just making sure that we specify that in our policy. So
everybody 15 years back has now actually had it.
Anybody that, I'm just throwing 15 out, but anybody who did not have it, when we went back in the records and checked, they either got it because it was a legal requirement, or we said, you know, you can't work for us, basically. It's pretty much how it stands, because that's a requirement.
And then some of them that they said didn't have it, when they checked other sources, they did have it.
Correct.
It was just in 2 different departments, so it was a lot of confusion, but I think everything's been worked out.
We pretty much have that covered now, as far as we know, it's been covered, and we have it set up so that the person's responsible for making sure that happens know that that's their responsibility.
Okay. Under D section, when I was reading through it, I know Kim Pitts made it clear verbally that when we do the tentative or temporary certificates, alternative and stuff like that, that these people are not earning, these are not years toward tenure. But I don't see it in writing
Because
that it's not.
let me
Okay.
just a little bit. Many of the things are not stated in because it's part of the law. And that portion fits under students first. It explains tenure, if it's, and I can direct you.
No, I believe that is one of
Students
them.
first. You can look at the Students First Act, that's where it's located, for positions that are just, for funding that's just temporary. then we can't gain tenure in those positions. So we wouldn't put anything in here that's the law already.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Good, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Gillis.
Any other questions?
I had a question. And just for clarification for me, and I ask a lot of questions, in 5.2.3, the hiring authority. Oh, okay. Oh, you just, okay, sorry. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Mrs. Wright.
Under hiring, under 5.2.1, the application procedures. Job applicants for all positions must file a formal application with the Human Resources Department. That application is online with the Alabama State Department of Education. 5.2.2, the qualifications. The applicants must meet the minimum qualifications of the position as provided in board policy, the job description for the position, the posted advertisement for the position, and otherwise established by the board in applicable laws. All right, here, is this where your
Yeah.
question's gonna be, Jana?
Yeah.
5.2.3, hiring authority. The board is responsible for making all final hiring decisions, and no hiring decision is official, final, or effective unless and until it is approved by a vote of the board. And you had a question about that, Ben?
And so is every person, every teacher that's hired, does it come from a recommendation from the superintendent? So it's not that we get, Mrs. Jane Doe, first grade teacher, and we vote on that.
You
It's,
get your personnel report.
okay, it's in the personnel report. So it's
Right.
not because it was very overwhelming when I read that. I thought, wow, that's
Oh.
a lot of voting.
Oh,
And,
it's all
okay.
done. You knew.
I know.
If Mr.
so-
Briers can fill you in.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, I will.
I should've called you first.
We got the
How to do each
personnel
one, because you don't
report,
do each personal one.
And it comes all of
Okay,
it.
But,
okay.
we've
And
been
you get
told
it early
year
and you
after
just
year
go
after
through it
year
and check.
that when we interview a teacher or, whatever the position may be, we cannot tell them
They have a
They have
job
a job.
until,
Okay, I understand.
they do
It's
not,
not
we
an
can
official
say,
till we
that
vote.
we would recommend them for the position, but we cannot tell them they have the job or guarantee them the job. It does not become official until Dr. Moore makes the
Recommend that we-
recommendation to
Okay.
you and it passes the board vote.
Gotcha, thank you.
And that's with other departments as well, not just
You won't-
principals at school. All right, 5.2.5, under nepotism, letter A, supervisory relationships. The employment decisions and relationships that violate any provision of Alabama law, including state ethics and nepotism laws, are prohibited. The superintendent is authorized to take action to identify and correct violations of the policy in a manner consistent with applicable law. So that's superintendent and board in letter A there.
Okay, got a question. This is something that I'm not sure that we totally follow. It's been a big issue with me. I don't remember what time I supplied the board. I brought this with me. I probably should make copies, but this was where I went through and took our list of all our employees, basically central office and so forth, salaries, whatever, last names, and it had, we definitely have a nepotism problem. And I brought this with me, I just didn't want it to be hearsay, because you can look at the last names. I know, Smith, things like that, we're not gonna be personal today, but there are some things that you just don't repeat, okay? Because there's not that many of them. And then when you have 3, 4, and 5 in our system, clearly we're not following this policy.
Hey,
And
may I address that? And so we can maybe, you can share your info and maybe I can help clarify, but nepotism is if I recommend to you that I want you to hire my sister anywhere in the system. So any of my relatives, cousins, or whatever, I tell them, don't apply for wherever I am as superintendent, because I can't make that recommendation to the board. Now, if you're a principal in a school, your sister or your brother can work at another school. That's not nepotism.
That's because say if I could not hire my sister, excuse me, Dr. Malone, because I would be their supervisor at that school.
And
My
the
sister
one-
can work in another building somewhere, and it's still not nepotism.
And you cannot supervise. They can be in the system as long as they're not supervised by that family member. And our organization, we are one of the largest employers in the city. So naturally, you are going to have relatives working, but you cannot supervise those relatives.
Right, so they can be in another location, just like if you were at the hospital somewhere. As long as you're not that person's supervisor, that's not nepotism. So what we try to do if we have a husband and a wife team, if he's the principal, I would not suggest that his wife be at that school. In many cases, if you become a principal and your wife is teaching there, we probably would talk to them about moving to another location, so we can take care of that supervision piece. But you can have relatives in the system, as long as you're not that person's supervisor.
Supervise.
And
Immediate
let me
super-
explain my concern. And I understand that we only have a couple people in human resources, but I've seen, and I'm not gonna use a name here either, I could, okay? But in recent personnel reports, we'll have a principal that's name is very, whatever, and you'll put a cousin or a sister, somebody with the same last name, and it's been misspelled.
No, ma'am.
But no, oh, yes, ma'am. And when you go to the certified, when you go to the state, then you see it's spelled the same way that the principal's is, but on the certified sheet it isn't. And when I say, yes, ma'am, I've already gone to Human Resources, Superintendent Moore, and they said, well, Lisa, we've only got one in here, I did that as a mistake, okay? That's where the trust issues come.
So are you saying that the person that you're talking about is related to the supervisor?
I think it was
Let's use terms like supervisor and the person who's.
No, but I just know that there have been names that have been misspelled, and it may have been an accident. It may really have been an accident. But when I go to the state list and find out, hey, it's spelled the same way as that principal, and y'all are transferring them to over where that principal is,
Okay, I think we still, to differentiate, let's make sure we understand, under nepotism, let's take out grammatical errors, misspellings of whatever. The rule is if I'm your supervisor and you are my relative. So, let's say somebody misspells a word. Maybe it's the same, close to the same last name. If that person is not related to that other, if the supervisor is not related, you can have two Smiths in the same school. Not related. You can have two Johnsons. You can have, as long as that person is not related to the supervisor, then it is not nepotism.
And I get that. But
Okay.
it's just an example without using names, that the name was Sikorsky. Okay, I'm making that up.
Okay.
And it's spelled, Shkipy. Doesn't make sense, but it's spelled the same way at that school, and that Sikorsky asked for somebody over here. It does bring to me a red flag, and I'm gonna question it.
Well,
That's fine. I have no problem. Just remember, if the supervisor is related to the person with the name that's spelled the same or misspelled, if that supervisor is not related to that person, then it's not nepotism.
Right, that's letter A is about the supervisory relationship. B, I think, addresses more of what you're referring to, where it's employment of family members, that board members, administrators, or supervisors may not use their positions to directly or indirectly seek or secure the employment of any family member as defined in the Alabama Ethics Law.
And are these are new revisions or new rewrites of these?
They're rewrites, correct?
They're
not new,
rewrites.
it's just a
So
rewrite.
it's defining it more specifically than it was before. So it should answer your questions, I think.
And
Unless-
under the supervision of an attorney, all of these there was a legal person involved in drafting these so that we, as much as possible, can meet the letter of the law.
And let me add, the one for nepotism, that recently there were some updates there, so we have the most recent from the attorney, so that we made sure that the most recent version of what the nepotism law says, without citing the law, because once again, we're not gonna cite what the law said. Our board policy is under inside of what that actual law would say, because the law supersedes anything that we would possibly want to do. And this came directly from the attorney, and this is the one that's used in many systems across the state. And it's up to
Do y'all
them.
have is there one big wall on this that I can see where it says that it means not from school to school? You see what I'm saying? Because.
You mean on the definition
Right,
of
right.
nepotism?
Yeah, under that, is there some law somewhere
But
that
she
says,
does.
that defines
It
nepotism
says-
a little bit deeper than this does, somewhere? Because to me, I read this, when, like what you're, I mean, I get what you're saying, that a principal can work here and his wife can work over here, I get that. But when you have a principal, a wife, a daughter, a cousin, whatever, I'm like, wait a minute. I mean, if that's okay, to me, in my definition, it's nepotism. Is there a bigger law?
Okay, we're referencing Alabama Code 41-1-5 as a source for this.
Say that again, Alabama Code,
It's
right
right
here,
after,
41, that's
right
right,
after
this one.
number
So I can
4.
go to that and just read that.
Yeah, try that first. If that
Clarification,
doesn't
okay.
work, let me know.
And Dr. Keith, if you look at all of those references, what we did is we actually asked for if it was a law that our policy fits within to reference that, so we can read for yourself. So hopefully that's.
Good.
And part C of that I'm not gonna go through, may address some of those issues that you have as well. Okay, we're moving on then to 5.4, non-teaching supplemental duties. And this is really additional duties on top of teaching. They are non-teaching duties, really your coaches, band, directors, people that are sponsors of clubs that are after school or extracurricular, that sort of thing. Compensation in the form of supplements may be paid for non-instructional supplemental duties in accordance with rates specified or established for such duties in the board's official salary schedule. It is in addition to the supplemental duties are considered in additional to their teaching assignments, but they are non-teaching assignments.
And those supplements also come to the board for.
Yeah, you see it on your personnel report.
And it's not part of their contract, it's not a part of their appointment or anything, that's usually something that comes up later.
Dr. Moore, can I ask a question on this one? When we start looking at some position reconstitution or just some creativity with maybe some support positions or any position as we're working on the budget, when we do supplemental duties for, let's say, a bookkeeper, we may lose a bookkeeper in one location, and then we add those duties to someone else. Will this cover that supplement if we're looking to downsize positions and not fill some spots? Would this cover us, or will we have to do something different when we bring that supplement to the board? Would this cover that?
Your example is a little unusual.
Mhm.
I would not think that we would give somebody some duties in another location from where they are already located. However, somebody in that location possibly could have another day or so added to, an hour or so added to something they're already doing their own payroll for.
Okay.
So that might constitute a supplement of some sort to compensate them for what they're doing. But if they're like paraprofessional or something, it might be overtime
Okay.
rather than a supplement.
Thank
So
you.
you kind of have to look at it case by case to make that determination.
Okay, all right.
5.5, professional development. Professional development is offered and ongoing, and the superintendent has the authority to make certain professional development opportunities, sessions, days mandatory. 5.6, employee conflicts of interest. This is another place where you would want to consult ethics.alabama.gov if you had specific questions. Employees may not use their offices or positions for personal gain and must adhere to applicable provisions of the Alabama ethics law. Employees may only engage in outside employment under the following terms and conditions. So, under letter A, the employee is not to engage in an outside business activity, basically while they're on NPS time. B is that their outside employment, because a lot of teachers, a lot of bus drivers, lunchroom workers have more than one job, and they have a second job to supplement their job with NPS. So B is that this outside employment should not interfere with any of their NPS duties. NPS is their bread and butter, therefore NPS comes first, and we expect them to put it first. 5.7, employee gifts. The employees may accept gifts from students or other members of the public if the gifts are in accordance with the Alabama ethics law. And that's no one person should give a gift to one individual to exceed the amount of $25 per semester. Let's see, what does it say? And $50 for the year. Basically, we've broken it down in our way of thinking as semesters, since that's the time for the teachers. Now, it does not limit a group type of gift to a teacher. Say, of course, I'm most familiar with those at a school level. The room mother in the elementary school classroom takes up or sends out a letter wanting to give the teacher a Christmas gift. And if the parents send in, gift cards or whatever, that gift can be more than $25, as long as no one person donated more than $25 themselves to that group. Does that make sense? I think this is where Ms. Fountain picks up. Are there any other questions about any of that?
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Cheryl Fountain, principal at Capitol Heights Middle School. I will be covering, beginning at 5.8, employee evaluations. As you know, all employees are evaluated. Certified personnel employees will be evaluated in accordance with an evaluation program that is approved by the Alabama State Board. Contract principals, of course, will be evaluated in accordance with the rules and regulations and requirements by the State Department of Education or otherwise permitted by law. Non-certified personnel will be evaluated in accordance with criteria and procedures developed by the superintendent. 5.9, personnel records. And this is always an interesting one at the school level, because a lot of times our teachers feel I need to look at my personnel record. And the thing that we have to tell them as administrators is it is kept in HR down at the central office. So that is where the personnel records are kept. A central personnel file will be maintained for all regular employees. The personnel file may contain information regarding the employee's current assignment, payroll status, and work history, but not limited to job qualifications, certification, licenses, employment contracts, anonymous material and other matters that are prohibited by law, regulation, or board policy from being maintained in personnel files may not be included therein. Employees may reasonably respond in writing to any material contained in the personnel file which they disagree, and such responses, of course, will be included in that file. Going to 5.10, employee leave. Work attendance, of course, as we know, is essential for getting a job done. Simply asking for punctual, regular attendance is essential for the school or any other location to run smoothly. And employees are expected to work within the schedule and remain at work each working day. Of course, if you look down at 5.10.2, these are the absences that are listed, starting with A, illness or injury, personal leave, vacation, professional, military, court leave, and G, other unpaid leave that is approved by the board upon a showing of substantial hardship or extraordinary circumstances. I want to make sure I highlight also that except as otherwise provided or permitted, an employee who is absent from work without approval, approved leave will be considered absent without leave in violation of board policy and subject to appropriate disciplinary action or measures. 5.10.3, paid sick leave. Persons that are eligible for paid sick leave are all regular time employees. They can accumulate paid sick leave. They can use sick leave for personal illness, personal injury, attendance upon an ill member of the employee's immediate family, which is defined as a spouse, parent, child, sibling, or any other person with a close personal tie. Of course, death of a family member, death of care of an individual with whom unusually strong personal ties exist. That means that that is someone that is closely connected with the individual and might not be a blood relative. Certification, employees must certify that sick leave was used for one of the reasons provided in state law and specify the reason, because a lot of time, some people might want to go on a field trip with a child or participate in another activity and want to utilize that sick leave, which is unethical. And so it's made perfectly clear to all employees that when you are using the sick leave, you might have a doctor's appointment that morning, and I might see you at the mall later on that afternoon. Being your supervisor, say, well, wow, they were sick today, they called me sick. But we have to look at it as, okay, they could have gone to the doctor that morning, the doctor could prescribe something, and then they chose to take the remainder of the day. Okay. And B, the employee submits a signed written account of the accident. This is dealing with if an on-the-job injury, 5.10.4. You know, sometimes we have seasonal injuries that occur. So it's very important that the employees, no matter how large or small, that they complete a document that goes to HR, and that the document goes to them and also remains at the school level. And it is important that they complete this document to send in within 24 hours of the accident. And of course, there sometimes are mitigating circumstances where the person had to might be transported by ambulance, did not have an opportunity to complete that, and we make sure that gets done, and we make sure that HR is communicated with that information. Personal leave, the board will grant 5 days of personal leave annually to eligible employees, all regular. Full-time teachers and other certified employees are eligible for this. Classified support employees can earn personal leave only if they are employed for 20 or more hours per week. So that would not be your cashier in the lunchroom, because I think they work hourly, maybe 4 hours. Okay? And again, this is for full-time employees.
I had a question.
Yes.
Another one, I'm sorry.
Sure.
The next paragraph, eligible employees may take the first 2 days of personal leave used during their work year without loss of pay. I don't understand that, so.
You earn 5 days, and 2 are earned paid days, 3 are not. So if you take the 2 that are paid, that you will earn pay for, and then the last 3, if you have to use a personal day, you will be docked according to what the pay is for a substitute. So it's 5 total, but 2 are paid and 3 are not. Am I answering that correctly, Ms.?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, yeah, okay. I got it now. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. All right, if we'll go over to 5.11, Family and Medical Leave Act.
Before you go there,
Sure.
I had one question about 5.10.8 on the military leave. If someone is called out for military service, and when they return, they're by law guaranteed a job, is it in the same location, or can it be at a different location? I didn't know.
I think if they're called for duty to drill or to be deployed, I think it is. I think if it's an extended time, they are guaranteed a job once they return. So if I've been called off for a year, you know, I don't think that position, am I correct, that the position is not held there, but a position will be for them when they return. It just might not be at that school.
Thank you.
All right, 5.11, Family and Medical Leave Act, and 5.11.1 is eligible employees. The FLA is applicable to all persons who have been employed for at least 12 months and have worked a minimum of 1,250 hours during the 12-month period. So if you look at point 2, 5.11.2, it lists medical leave provided by the Act under this. Eligible employees are entitled to 12 weeks of unpaid leave during any 12-month period for one or more of the following reasons listed: the birth and first-year care of a newborn, the placement of a foster child or adoption, the care of an immediate family member defined as a spouse, child, or parent with a serious health condition, the taking of medical leave because of the employee's own serious health condition. And then it goes on to list the remaining reasons for the family leave. If you go over to 5.12, the sick leave bank, a sick leave bank plan for full-time certified and classified employees is hereby established in accordance with applicable provisions of state law. A sick leave bank committee will be established to oversee the operations of the sick leave bank in accordance with law, state law, and the following provisions. So there are provisions that are listed below that I will not, and you all can read at your leisure.
Okay, Ms. Fountain, I wanted you to get through that so you wouldn't say you were gonna cover it. Okay, I wanted you to get through it. Because I really have two questions on 5.11 and 5.12.
Okay, 5.11.
And y'all could just, you know,
Okay,
make me understand. Where it says Family Leave and Medical Leave Act, which I know that's a law, okay? And then we have a sick leave bank, so it's two different things.
Mhm.
One is, you know, we are a board that is supposed to help with policy. And when I saw no mention, no spot for our EAP program, which is your employee assistance program. And we've had a good many employees take advantage of that and milk that system. We had, I know when I was here for the first year or two, I think it was by the second year, we had people that took leave under that EAP, and it would be for years. It took us years to get rid of them, because that's something we're not supposed to know about. And what I'm talking about is
Let's
people.
clarify EAP.
EAP, okay, all right.
Let's clarify what that is. I'll let Ms. Pitts, I would do it, but I'll let her do it. But
Okay.
I think the clarification is really necessary.
EAP does not grant you any leave. It's something that we pay for our employees as a district, and it stands for Employee Assistance Program. We can refer someone to EAP to get counseling, that only guarantee 3 sessions that we have to release them to let them go. If they decide they need additional, then that's really on them. Per year, we can give them 3. Now, they may be on leave for some other reason, and they're going to EAP. But the EAP is just an assistance to to the employees and their families. For example, if there's a drug problem, and it doesn't have to be the employee, it could be their spouse. And it's causing problems so that this employee can't get to work on time, or is having difficulty in the classroom, then we can refer them. We don't get a report about what's happening. We only get a report back if they feel like this employee is a danger to be in the classroom. But they can't take leave on the EAP. They only get 3 free visits.
Okay.
And the rest.
And how long are those? Because I mean, how long are those?
Visits.
Are
If
they
you're going
off?
to, let me see if I can help a little bit. If you're going to see a psychologist,
Right.
because you have some issues, so you have 3 sessions, whichever the standard session is for a psychologist. That's how long you go for one session. Then you can have a second one, then you can have a third one. After that, if you need to see that psychologist more, that's not on us. We've assisted you with the first 3, but you don't get leave under EAP.
All right, then, I know Mary was here. Mary explained to me this. Why did we have people that were here from 2009 to 2015? Or not 15, yeah, it was 15. And they had missed all these days, and we still had them. We finally terminated them. The way y'all are coming across up here is that it was, they went to see a psychiatrist. I'm talking.
It wasn't an
over
EAP,
weeks.
is what I'm saying.
I'm
EAP.
talking, these people had weeks off.
They may have been on
You-
some kind of a food
If you're talking about who I think you're talking about borrowing sick leave days, so you
No, well,
talking.
that was my next question. I mean,
Okay.
Well, let's skip that. My thing is, can we not we've had employees miss an entire year. We've had employees miss 6 months. We've had whatever. And I know I brought this to your attention, and sometimes I wonder, well, why didn't they claim disability? Why are we still paying? Why are we still paying for them up here when they're missing, and these kids are missing out on an education from a teacher for 60 days? Why? I mean, when we first came here today, and this is probably coming out wrong, when we first came here today, it's like, well, we're gonna do this, and, you know, y'all already know that y'all read it, y'all's had plenty of time to read it. Well, part of the problem is we haven't actually gotten down to the nitty gritty and said, hey, we've gotta stop this, you know, this milking of the system. And somewhere we have to put, I would think that we as a board in the work session, this is the perfect session to, not this one, but why can't we sit down and go, hey, once somebody misses so many days, you know, hello, we get another teacher in there, a certified teacher. Why, you see what I'm saying?
Let me see if I can help a little bit. Number one, okay, these policies are in place on the kinds of leave that you may take. Now, if you are borrowing, if for instance, sometimes they're mixed one across the other one. If you're a member of the sick leave bank, and you're a member of the sick leave bank, I'm a member. If I get sick and I need to borrow some days and you say you're gonna loan them to me, and you have enough to loan me, then I might be out for an extended period of time because you are a member and I'm a member, you're loaning me days. And it falls within the context of the policy. You know, we may say a physician has to tell us why you're out, that's confidential information, but you may be able to borrow days. And there have been people who over time borrow consistently.
Lots of days, yeah.
Yes, and I've been made aware of that from the time I got here, and we've dealt with some of those people, and they are no longer an employee, and they're not borrowing days anymore. And so, yes, if we don't watch it, somebody might be able to abuse it. But the way these policies are designed, it covers lots of different arenas, and sick leave bank means you can borrow
And
from
my
somebody.
question is, why can't we as a board make a policy to stop any further future abuse? You see what I'm saying, to say, hey, once you've reached this, you're done. I mean, why can't we not, maybe not tonight or whatever, but another time, can we not go, hey, really?
Well, let's take it to this degree. Suppose you have a person who has a catastrophic illness. So it would be very difficult to say to that person who has a catastrophic illness, if your coworkers want to loan you some days until you can hopefully recover.
Right.
And it may be longer than the limit that we give them.
You and I both know, we all know that there are people that truly abuse it. And I'm talking about those people, tackling that. There can be an exception to the rule that can be written in the policy, you know, if it was catastrophic.
Right.
But we've got others that, you know,
If
we
the
don't.
physician, let me say this too, and I think these policies cover that, we just have to monitor to make sure we're doing it the way it's designed. But sometimes a physician will continue to give someone a document that says, based on my ability as a physician, I say this person still needs to be out another month. And so they borrow from the sick leave bank. So we have a physician who's saying that.
Okay,
We
but-
can't really go ask that physician, are you sure about this, you know?
Okay, let's take an example, and I'm not using names, so don't spaz out y'all thinking she's fixing to leave. We had a school, I'll never forget, we had the same school a lot of them were at, or at least two of them were at. And we get before the board, this woman, you know, she missed 60 days the first year. She missed 111 days the next, I've still got it on my phone, 105. It took us 4 years. We only have 180 days. But here's a woman that spent 4 years, and across 4 years, she started with 60, went to 80, went to 105. And this lady thought I was her buddy. I remember, she called me the day that somebody was shot at the school, and she said, did you hear somebody got shot? And I went, yeah. And
But once
said,
you brought that to my attention, I dealt with it, correct?
Right, now she's gone now, but it took 4 years.
Okay, well, we're gonna
But
try to
that's-
make sure that
That's what I'm saying.
we're keeping up with that kind of thing doesn't happen. You know, when extreme cases come to my attention, let me just say it this way. When it comes to my attention, as an extreme case, I will delve into it.
And I will say you have dealt with it.
I will do what I
I
can do.
just
gonna
don't
check
let
it
it
with
take
that.
4 more years. You know,
Yes, ma'am.
that's
I got
where you go.
I agree with you. If we can do something about it, we will.
And there is a code referencing anything dealing with the sick leave at the bottom down there.
If Ms. Keith, I have another question, be surprised. Okay. In 511.1, it talks about the eligible employees for the Family Medical Leave Act, that all persons who have been employed for 12 months are eligible, and then it lists all. And then on 5.11.5, it says that if spouses are working in the system, then they are combined 12 weeks. So why is that? If they each get,
That's the law. Ms. Gibbons.
yes, please, yes.
That's a revision to this policy, because our old policy, I think this will give you some context, that a person could take leave, and Dr. Keith, this is will help with yours too. They could take leave, and it would be continuous because this didn't kick in. Because we do have spouses that work, so it's a combined time, rather than letting someone take 12, and guess what, I get another 12 because my spouse works, or whatever the case may be, they can't piggyback, because it's within the same family. And so then we combined it, so it's a total of 12 and not 12 for.
Okay, and see, is that, I don't want to use the term legal, but is that legal to do that? So if my husband and I don't work at the same place, then I would get 12 weeks and he would get 12 weeks. So I could take 12 off, and then when I went back to work, he would take the 12 off. But we don't do that in the schools.
No, we used to, but we did find a lot of abuse that way. That's one of the concerns we actually took to the attorney, and she was really outdone that we still did it this way.
Okay.
Most people don't use it. We were one of the few systems who didn't butt it up together. One of the very few systems. And so she gave us the policies that are legal and that actually work to our benefit to cure the problems that we have. So yes, this is something we probably should have done 4 years ago, if not more.
Okay.
But hopefully we have done this.
Okay, I understand it. It just looked like it was a conflict with those, because it was saying two different things.
In our professional organization, about 2 years ago, most people went to it then, but we were not in policy revision, so we did not. We knew that eventually we would revise our policies, and that's one of the ones we wanted to ensure, to not have such chronic absenteeism
Mhm.
with our employees across the district. And we think that will help, because if you do have families, you know how that works. Dr. Keith just explained it very well. You know, it backs up, and then it looks more chronic than it actually is. But we think that this will cure, and yes, this is done across the state. And like we said, an attorney actually drafted this for us, and this is what she has used in every place, and it is held up for years.
It clarified this too, when I I mean, maybe a dumb question, but it looks here, if you look at that 511.1, it said, I don't know what page it is, 12, must be 12, yeah, it is 12, okay. It's sort of like what Ms. Bailey just said, okay? You've got, on one end, you say any employee's covered, but then it says that they have to have worked
Yes.
1,250 days. So we should be able to take these for,
Our-
oh, is it hours? Oh, okay, boom.
Hours.
Okay, that's my, can't read today. Then that clarified that. Dumb question. It really was dumb, because I thought it was days of play.
And so, and also to distinguish, there's a difference between family medical and the sick leave bank. There's a difference in what that means. Two different things.
All right, moving to 5.13, administrative leave. The superintendent is authorized to place an employee on administrative leave upon a determination that the best interests of the school system will be served by such action. Administrative leave relieves the employee of regular work responsibilities pending resolution of matters or circumstances that give rise to the leave. And of course, if you look at the bottom part here, this last statement, administrative leave may be accompanied by such additional restrictions or conditions as may reasonably be imposed by the superintendent under the circumstances. And that's depending on what the accused is accused of doing or whatever. Okay. Any questions? All right, thank you.
I was lucky enough to draw the section on sexual harassment.
You of all people.
So this begins with section 5.15. The board strictly prohibits unlawful discrimination in all of its programs, offices, departments, and facilities. Sexual harassment, as defined by law, is a form of unlawful discrimination and will not be tolerated from employees or other persons associated with the board. If an employee has a complaint, the procedures to
You might want to talk about your situation.
let the superintendent know about that
So we feel
complaint
good
are
to
outlined
say
here.
something about
In
that.
sections 5.15.3, first, the reporting should be immediate, and that no employee, no one who would complain about this has to present that complaint to the person who is the subject of the complaint.
Mrs. Wright, Jana has, you want to tell her about what you just shared with us?
Yes, and y'all may have heard of it, I passed everybody out the information, but, we are part of the National Children's Alliance, and there is a, Title 1X that's a federal law or statute that addresses sexual abuse and harassment in schools from kindergarten all the way through colleges. I got an email today, and Congress is looking at making it less for K through 12. For one of the examples they gave is if a teacher sends an email or text that's sexually inappropriate, that it does not have to be reported to law enforcement and it does not have to be investigated, that it will be a hearing within the schools. So I passed out the information to the board and to Mr. Rowling and Mr. Salter that, and Superintendent Moore, that to look into that we as children's advocacy centers are extremely concerned about this because it's almost like we're going backwards. Now they're looking at colleges too, which is a lot different because, they're young adults and they're past the age of being defined as a child at 18. But to be able to look at that and maybe write a letter from the district to our congressman to say that we are not in favor of this and not in favor of changing this because, it puts a lot of children in K through 12 at risk.
I agree. This policy, though, is about employees. who have
Right, it
complaints.
just seemed to segue. It was all
Yeah.
about sex, so I thought I'd throw it out there.
Might as well.
Okay, so
Sorry.
now we do cover this kind of thing in our student code of conduct and that kind of thing, so this would fit right into that.
Yes, and if they change the law, obviously, we're gonna have to address that, so, okay.
So, the first they have to do is to report it as soon as possible, and they don't have to report that to the person that might be sexually abusing or harassing them. There are two ways to go. The complainant might decide to do an
Yeah, but I
informal
mean, the thing
complaint.
about it,
This
if
is
you
in
still
Part
talk
B,
about it, that
in
was a good way to get it in there.
5.15.3. And if they do that, they put it in writing to the superintendent and ask the superintendent to investigate. If after the superintendent investigates and determines some type of conclusion, if the complainant is not satisfied with that, they can ask that the superintendent move it to a formal complaint procedure. And those are also listed. The first thing is that the superintendent is responsible for receiving that written complaint, or the human resource director could be the second person if the superintendent is not available. The complaint form and contents, it must be made in writing, signed by the complainant, and fully describes the circumstances surrounding the alleged harassment. If for some reason they cannot put that in writing, then the superintendent would do that. The investigation then proceeds, and superintendent, after investigating, would consult with legal counsel and also look for a recommendation and make sure that the board is apprised of that situation. If the complainant is not satisfied, this is in Part D, with that investigation and what is determined, then the complainant may ask that the board hear and make a final decision. So there are steps in place at every avenue. Any questions about that?
I just do have a comment. It's
Okay.
very important that we don't skip and jump to D.
Right.
Board
Right.
members and superintendents. It's important that we follow this because this is very legalistic. So if we skip and jump over to something out of a certain kind of order, we could set ourselves up
For being
for
sued.
consequences that we don't really have to have. So it's very important that we follow this policy the way it's outlined.
I believe that 5.15.5, confidentiality, we want to make sure that this investigation is kept as confidential as possible. However, when you're investigating, you cannot always maintain that. It cannot be guaranteed. And then, point 6, after that, there will be no retaliation. And that is in this board policy. False accusations that are made in bad faith might be a reason for disciplinary action. And 5.15.7, penalties. Any employee who violates the terms of this policy or who impedes or unreasonably refuses to cooperate with a board investigation regarding allegations of sexual harassment will be subject to appropriate disciplinary action up to and including termination. Any questions? Okay. I also have the next part, reduction in force. This policy applies to reduction in force that are implemented by layoffs as contemplated in the Alabama Code. So, if there will be a reduction in force, if you look at 5.162, we want to ensure that the board implements these layoffs by using objective criteria. And those are listed there also, seniority, longevity, or time in service that will be more specifically described in the notice of layoff that is provided to affected employees. You look at years of service, degrees, certification, job classification, written or otherwise documented performance evaluations that can be fairly, accurately, and objectively compared to other situated employees for the purpose of ordering or ranking, provided that such evaluations predate the RIF announcement or declaration by not less than 30 days.
I have a question about, just above that, in B, it says, the criterion or criteria on which the layoffs are to be based shall be announced or otherwise made known by the board.
Yes.
I don't understand that.
Well, you would have to, the board would have to let the public know, or the school system employees know, am I right, that these layoffs were going to happen.
Okay.
And this is the criteria that they would use.
And what does RIF stand for?
Reduction in force.
Thank you.
Ms. Pitts, did you want to? Employees who have been laid off may be recalled under 3 circumstances. A, the nature of the position hasn't changed. B, the laid off employee remains qualified. And C, the laid off employee certifies in writing that he or she is available. This right only extends for 1 year. So if we had a reduction of force this spring, then those people, if they remained qualified and if that job became open within the next year, they could be reinstated.
And the difference is there, in the previous work policy, we held it for 2 years. So that means we had to keep up with those employees. For example, if our financial situation changed and we were able to hire back, we could go back 2 years. This work policy was current in most districts now, we only go back 1.
And 5.16.7, notice, we must notify those being laid off and the recall by either U.S. Postal certified or registered mail, hand delivery, or other such means as would be reasonable. Any questions?
Comment, this is a system-wide process, so it is not an individual school reduction in force. So, example, if we said we had to reduce by 20 people, we look across the system at this criteria to determine who and where those 20 people are. So they won't necessarily be in one location.
Right.
I've got a few. It is on the sexual harassment. Is this just employee to employee sexual harassment?
In this policy, yes, employee to employee, which could be
Okay.
a principal to a teacher or a central office employee to someone in the school.
Is there any additional policy like student involvement or anything like that?
That's in the code of conduct, which is board policy
Are
also.
you meaning student on student or adults?
Could be a student teacher, anything like
So
that?
that
Oh, this
becomes
is
a
adult to
legal law
adult on this.
enforcement kind of a thing, DHR, et cetera.
And we're all mandatory reporters, of course.
With what we're dealing with now is adult to adult, and with the students involved, that's the code of conduct, where you would find that.
And as mandatory reporters, then
Right.
other people at agencies would be involved. Anything else?
This I skipped, and just one question that I want to know. It says currently, who gets additional stipends? I know we've got athletic coaches.
Are you looking at supplements?
That
Which
was in
part of it?
hiring.
Or have we gotten there yet?
That,
We've already talked about that. I forgot to ask that.
What, give me the number. The reference
It
number.
was where we talked about stipends,
is the part that,
Supplemental
Liz,
supplemental things.
That's on there.
Hold on.
It's 5.4.
Right. Yeah. Non-teaching supplemental duties.
Okay.
We were talking about additional stipends, athletic coaches 7 through 12, academic coaches 9 through 12. Is there anybody else that gets stipends besides the coaches? There would be, wouldn't there? There would be
There's
like
some
department
on
heads.
Department heads get supplemental pay.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Okay.
Because they practice them, some of them ready for football games, not, but it's for the high school,
Okay.
bands. Those are the ones that receive some.
Like some of your scholastic support activities, it's stated.
But you get to approve those. They're brought to you in a list, and then you get to approve them.
That's on the personnel report too.
Will we be doing stipends?
You don't
I know
do it
this
one
came
by
up a while
one, it's a
ago
whole
on
lot of them at one
employees that take
time.
on extra
You know, that's-
responsibilities like other job, not coaching, not clubs, but
Yeah.
if I'm I don't know, assistant principal and I take on maybe some reading coaching responsibilities or something.
It's outside of your normal duty, kind of a, I think that's almost a case by case, looking
Yeah.
at the time of the day that you're doing it, it's summer or whatever, but normally, typically not. Ms. Pitts, were you gonna add something?
I was gonna say, most job descriptions, and I can almost say all, but I'll say most, it says in other duties as assigned. So if those things fit within the things that you can do, then it would not be a supplement. If it's over the top of or something separate from, what your real job actually is, what you were hired for, then that would still have to come to the board. And you all have seen that before in your board package, will say, a supplement for whatever it is. I'll give you a great example. For
See
example,
that
when you first
information
started
from other folk can ask.
3 or 4 years ago, there was a supplement given to a person because no one did charge over the district. No one did, so we gave that person a supplement for a period of time. They had from this time to this time, because that's different from what the person was doing, not a job description that we had for that, and then that was brought to the board, they approved that for that period of time. The supplements, we usually put a time period on it.
Do we do it also for teacher tutors?
Well, teacher tutors is actually a job that we actually have and you apply for and you pay for that. It's not a supplement, it's a separate job that's usually paid for out of Title I funds.
That's right.
So, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
And sometimes employees, if there's a change in a job, a person leaves and somebody else takes on that responsibility, they get a supplement until a person is hired and then that supplement goes away. So if you could think about it that way as well. Mm-hmm.
All right, Jeanette got the sex, I get the drugs and rock and roll part. 5.18, drug and alcohol testing of employees who drive school system vehicles. I am not one of them. But we have a lot of vehicles, and there are those jobs that require, not just bus drivers, but other jobs, drive a vehicle that's owned by the school system. When you are hired, you are to submit to a drug and or alcohol test. Now, it can be done randomly and at other times, but whenever there is an accident involving the vehicle while the employee is driving, or a reasonable suspicion that the employee is intoxicated or impaired by illegal drug use or alcohol while driving an MPS-owned vehicle. If the employee refuses to undergo the drug and alcohol test, they may be subject to disciplinary action up to and including termination.
Mrs. Hill,
Yes.
are we still having, I guess you'd call it pop-up drug testing where, you know, any day, anytime you can ask that they go down and be tested, or have we stopped doing that?
I believe that's, go ahead, sorry.
In the area that we're talking about for transportation.
Okay,
So bus drivers, yes, are subject to.
yeah, yes, mhm.
Okay. 5.19.3. That is where, prior to employment, prior to the first time a covered employee performs a safety-sensitive function for the board, the employee must undergo testing for alcohol and controlled substances. And that's, upon their employment. A post-accident testing, each surviving driver who is involved in an accident involving a school bus shall submit to testing as soon as practicable following such accident if such driver performing safety-sensitive function receives a citation within 8 hours of the occurrence, and there's bodily injury to a person, or there are more than one vehicle involved. One or more.
Where are you?
If you call me. Okay. But anytime you have a reasonable suspicion, whether it's a bus driver or someone else driving an MPS vehicle, you can request the drug testing or the alcohol testing. Um, 5.20 searches. And this is of personnel. So our entire section is focused on personnel. This does not get into searching students. Board property, anytime a board employee is on board property, anything they have brought onto board property can be searched. All school system property, facilities and grounds may be entered, inspected, and searched for any lawful purpose by board officials or their designees at any time, without prior notice and to the fullest extent permitted by law. So, The right to enter, inspect, and search includes and extends to, but is not limited to, board-owned or controlled offices, desks, file cabinets, lockers, storage areas, computers, files, documents, data, and devices, however and wherever kept, stored, or maintained. So even if you say have a laptop you're using at home that's board policy, then you can be requested to bring that in for it to be searched. Employee property, when owned MPS property is subject to search. That the board reserves the right to inspect employees' vehicles, purses, files, and other personal property if the supervisor forms a reasonable, individualized suspicion that the property contains evidence of a violation of board policy, that in the direct supervisor's discretion. Now, that's not to say you're gonna walk in and just search somebody's purse. You have to have a reasonable suspicion to search their personal property, even if it's on the MPS property. And that is, it has to negatively affect the educational environment, and it could lead to the employee's suspension or termination. It could contain any material, object, or substance that otherwise creates or presents a risk of harm or injury to the school, workplace, or persons therein. And any person who doesn't cooperate is subject to disciplinary action. Are there any questions?
I have one question about the alcohol, because it addresses bus drivers. Is there any policy on teachers and drug testing?
There's reasonable suspicion, and we have that before, for example, we have someone who smells of alcohol, then we actually go out, security goes out, and then we take care of them. We don't just randomly.
Now, I'm not saying random, I'm asking if there's a policy about, it's not in this section here, though.
We only deal with, if I can answer that, I think, the random pieces, we don't have a standard, you will be tested, but we are allowed to do random
That's what I'm
testing.
asking.
Right here, 519 point, B, and then over to C on page 25. Deals with random testing.
And that's not just to drivers.
Right, we can do it according to this, any employee can be tested randomly. But also,
Yeah.
typically,
If they follow
for
that
instance, if we had a
under
bus driver, I would say, because we can test a bus driver, anybody buying and driving a vehicle, for our own protection, even if we don't suspect that that person has been using a drug, I would say for our own protection, go on and do the test, so that if it comes back, we can say we did test this person, there was no alcohol or drug involved. So I think it has a twofold effect, either to protect us and the driver, or to show that this person was indeed using something that was a controlled substance that should not be.
I think that's covered under the 5.19.3 part, the testing program authorized.
Okay. I just didn't see it.
It says all covered. Wait,
So
There was one question, no, back here, you had a question?
did we just,
Yes, my question was, speaking of the tutoring, I know there's a lot of school teachers after hours tutor and don't get supplemental pay. And it's outside of contract hours. And it's something that's highly encouraged by the administrators. So how does that handle or fall within that policy?
I think that basically is going to be based on the teacher and the teacher's heart and feeling for teaching and wanting their students to succeed. If you participate in an after-school program where there is a supplement, you have that opportunity, and I think most teachers do to select, I'm not sure. I know at my school, we were able to have teachers to apply and they just selected and chosen. But if you as a teacher, or even myself as a administrator said, hey, I want to stay at school and give me time. I think that's something that all of us would encourage, but not mandate or force.
I hear you, and us teachers do have a passion, but just as a office employee who's asked extra duties and got supplement, do they not have the same passion? Or the coach?
Let me help you out with that a little bit. That is not, first of all, the tutoring that you're talking about is not a requirement. Let me finish. So if we allowed in and everybody who decided to stay after work and tutor and said we were gonna pay them because of
Everybody
that, I
wanna
don't
stay.
think we'd be able to afford it, number one. But it's not a requirement. If a teacher chooses to do that outside of a program that we have said we're gonna do through Title I or some other funding source, and you are approved to be a part of that program, then we, of course, have that money set aside to pay. But outside of that, if it's not a requirement, then it would be very difficult financially for a school system to pay, because every teacher in every school could decide, I'm gonna tutor after school. And that just would not be financially feasible.
Yes, ma'am, I understand exactly what you're saying. However, when principals present it to the teachers, it's as if it is mandatory as a requirement. We need you to give at least 1 or 2 days after school to tutor, or we need you to do X, Y, Z. It's presented as if it's mandatory. I hear what you're saying, but it's not just tutoring, I use that as an
She comes
example.
every
Other
time,
duties that
and that's
teachers
probably so great. She teaches,
are
she's with
pressed on as if it's
AEA
mandatory.
and MCEA.
Okay, I would say then to you, if that is an abuse of what you would consider to be abuse of power, then you need to let us know. So, I mean, I've been a principal, so I would sometimes encourage teachers to do some other things, you know, like coming back to a PTA meeting or staying for a faculty meeting. Those things are within the law. But if you feel that somebody's mandating and requiring you to do something far outside of what should be normally expected, then that is something you need to notify. You can tell me or HR about it and we'll look into it. But we can't allow everybody to just decide I'm going to tutor after school and therefore I should get paid for it. The other thing is this, if you're tutoring your own school children after school for pay, that is itself is another issue that we have to deal with. If it's inside of a program, there's a way to deal with that, but if it's outside, if it's an individual teacher tutoring some of the children that she or he may teach during the day for pay, then that becomes another issue. So we have to look at all of that when I can't answer your question per se, but I'm kind of giving you some broad generalities that deal with that. But again, if it's an abuse, then you certainly should tell somebody.
I'd like to say this, and it may be out of line, but I'm gonna piggyback off of what Ms. Fountain said. Some teachers, especially born teachers, I think, do things out of their heart. They help students. And I've heard Montgomery Public Schools, and even friends of mine that teach at South University with me, they will compare their pay with Pike Road's pay. And they'll go, do you know these teachers are getting, a couple $1,000s extra over here? I don't know if that's true or not, but they'll bring that up to me. And immediately I think about what other teachers in this city are paid. And I think the highest any private school pays, maybe 35. I'm at a private school right now and I make 13. And I look at somebody that's making in their 40s and I go, and you're complaining? Just sometimes we do things out of our heart. I think if a principal's pushing you, it's sort of like what Dr. Moore said, then I think that would be something that I would probably bring up to AEA if you feel pressure.
Ms. Pitts wanted to add
I
something.
want us to go back, I think it addresses on page 1, under personnel, letter B, under 5.1. And it says, employees are required to perform the duties and responsibilities are assigned to them by the board, the superintendent and/or principal, or their supervisors. Such duties and assignments may extend beyond or outside of the instructional day and may include off-campus functions, events, and activities. And I think that
Covers it.
Okay. Do we have anything else on this personnel? Thank you to the ladies here appreciate your time in working on it.
It was after school hours.
It'd be hard to give you one. But you're the administrator.
The next item that we're discussing tonight, I had asked Dr. Moore to give us a little bit of insight on talking about hiring, possible contact with, possibly hiring Alan Ziegler for the possible millage increase. And she has information, I think.
Okay, I just kind of have some broad information I'll give you. So, Mr. Ziegler is an attorney out of Birmingham, and he spent a good deal of time over the years helping local school districts plan a process for campaigning and at some point having a vote for a millage increase. So what he does is he goes in and looks at each local, say, school system in this case, and every county's rules or city's rules about how you increase your millage or get it to the voting stage. And it's somewhat different probably depending on where you are. So what they do in, say, Pike Road might be different from the way you have to get it done in Montgomery County. So he does the research and everything for you from a legal perspective, and then he talks to you or gives you some document that says this is the process that you need to follow, these are the things you need to know, these are all the different nuances, because he's researched it from the legal perspective about how to get it done. So I've used him before. It's been, I would say, many years, but I've used him, and I know he's very popular across the state because, and I think Mr. Watts is nodding his head because they used him in Birmingham when they were dealing with their increased perspectives. So he's a person who's very knowledgeable. He has the reputation and the know-how to help get it done so that you meet all of the legal obligations and requirements that come under your particular area of the state. So it could be different because we don't have home rule and, we don't have a lot of things that would allow you as a system to even get this going. So this is the idea of, if you would want to talk about the possibility of working with him and having him or his agency to submit a proposal for what he would do. And of course, there would be a fee attached because he's an attorney and, he doesn't do it free, but, a proposal from him about what he could do to help Montgomery work toward getting that on the ballot.
My question would be, what's the ballpark figure fee?
I'm not sure because it would depend on what you need. I would say in some places it may be up to maybe 30,000, depends on how much time. They do, they charge by the hour. So if you don't want him to work with 20 hours and you get to a point where you want to stop it, but his research takes the time to go into those documents, so legislative documents, any local rules or regulations pertaining to millage. And so it's sort of based on how much time he spends doing it. Of course, if you establish a contract with him, you could put some limits on, at this point, we might want to stop it, but we might want to allow him to go this far, and we could ask him in his proposal how much time he thinks it will take. So before you vote on a contract, he would lay all that out in a proposal. Then if the proposal doesn't meet your needs or if it's something beyond what you want to do, then you could decide, because it's a vote of the board to enter into a contract with him. So first you get a proposal from him.
I understand that he is a very well-known, popular attorney, especially when it comes down to taxes. Do we have any other recommendations? Are we asking for any other proposals, or just Attorney Ziegler?
Well, at this point, because we know that he has that expertise beyond anybody else that I've ever heard about, and even the state superintendent and others have named him as a person who really does a great job. He's the one that you hear about across the state for having the expertise. I don't know of any other name that pops up. I know he's gonna be, I'm hearing that he's gonna be training some other attorneys in this process, but right now, he's kind of the guru of the whole thing.
I had a question, and I've heard of Mr. Ziegler. I know he's doing something in Butler County, if I'm not mistaken, or Butler. One of the things I wanted to ask, or add, is, during the passing of the resolution, I would have liked to have had that name then. That would have given us, at least someone as a point of reference, because I know, you know, many other things have transpired. But anywho, I was wondering if he would give a look at the resolution that was passed, and I think they're fair questions. To just kind of look over some things to, you know, for me, I don't know about the rest of the board, but I know I put a lot of work into it. And I'm not saying, with what I had, and the people I talked to, I did what I thought needed to be done for our kids. So I wanted to know if he could, in his research, build up and maybe help kind of add to the information perhaps that I did put together, to just kind of build it up, because I know it talks about, well, and he knows, I mean,
He knows all the ins and
that.
outs, so.
And how soon are we looking to bring him in?
Well, what I would do if it's consensus of the board, then I'll go ahead and start trying to reach out to him for a proposal. And about pretty much what do we need to do in Montgomery County to get this on the ballot? And what are the ins and outs, things that we need to know? So that would be my contact with him if it comes out that you all want me to pursue getting a proposal from him. And so the proposal will be what you vote on as, do we want to do this based on what he's going to charge us, et cetera, et cetera. And he could give us, just know, it's kind of like an RFP, but give us the parameters of what he can do for us, how he can do it, and a timeline on it, and that kind of thing.
And I want to say I'm not opposed to it, because this is definitely about getting our system, the money, the resources that is needed. It's been a long time, and our children have been waiting for quite some time. So that's why I asked about the time limit, because I'm appreciative of my hard work. I'm just appreciate myself.
And you should, yeah, absolutely.
But I want to make sure that our students are getting the necessary resources, and our teachers are getting the necessary resources that they need. So, you know, I was probably the one with the biggest raised eyebrow hearing his name, but you know, in the end, if it's going to get us what we need.
Yeah.
Can we do an informal poll of who would be in favor of at least getting Dr. Moore to get the information? I mean, I know I'm in.
The information's not gonna cost us anything, we're just to get an idea, but no, because we don't, this is a work session, this is
It's
not.
not a vote, it was.
Just to see who would poll us to see.
To see
Yeah.
if we want to
Yeah.
ask Dr. Moore to
Right,
pursue it.
this,
And I think
this
the
is,
answer is yes.
Okay.
yeah.
So I have to say this, I just have to say this, okay? And I'm just gonna say it. This millage thing is already a big thing with the city. It's already something I think the city is thinking about. So here we are spending, you know, possible $30,000, but yet we can't afford a teacher, an extra dance teacher at BTW. We're making these cuts at places where we need people like teachers. You know, and then we're gonna use it on something that's already gonna happen.
That's not necessarily gonna happen if you don't execute it correctly, it won't happen. And it's like a campaign, and sometimes, let me say this, and I understand your concern, Dr. Keith, but sometimes, when we're talking about millage increases, this will maybe create an opportunity for us not to have to let people go, or not to have to have one dance teacher when we might be able to use two, because we financially cannot afford to do certain things. So it's kind of like when you're working on your house and the roof, you may be adding a room and then the roof starts leaking, you gotta fix the leak. It's just an avenue now to see what it would take, because it appears that the majority of the board would be interested in trying to increase the millage, which we at 10 mills, that's a ridiculously low amount for a system
Yeah.
the size of Montgomery. When you compare it to Pike Road in Huntsville, Alabama at 27.5. That's ridiculous. This is the capital of the state. And so we can't do the kind of things that we want to
But
do.
we had, Dr. Mackey, I'm not saying he put us in our place, but I feel like there's other entities that are gonna handle this already
I think
for us.
Dr. Mackey in your meeting suggested Mr. Jacobs.
And I did,
Did, but at 30,000,
Well, I'm
I'm
just,
sort of like,
don't quote me
what?
as that's the accurate fee, because I don't know. I just know kind of what it took for us to do it in other locations. He may not charge that much.
Dr.
or we
Moore.
won't.
Dr. Moore, I'm in agreement with our president. We are not saying we're gonna do this or not do it, but we don't need to spin our wheels and this is just a proposal, because we don't know, we might decide if after you come back, we don't want to do it. But we gotta start somewhere. And when you have some people saying we don't need it, others saying we do need it, I just think we need to have something that we can rely on to say that it's X, Y, Z. That's all we're asking you to do. And I think you got the majority of the board who says, along with our president, that we want you to just at least look into it.
So I will start trying to make contact with him.
Before I forget.
yes, go.
In reference to, at least I do hear your concerns, but, and you said that the city, I wanna make sure I heard you right, that the city and the county are working on it. Is
I
that?
don't know that, I just know it's been in the news enough that obviously, and I hope people don't think that I'm not for a millage. We talked about this at training at AASP last week. I'll just stop there.
Well,
I just feel like,
I will say this, if they wanna help, they can help us pay for his fees.
They certainly could.
Yeah.
But we don't know what the fee is, and we don't know what his proposal would be to us. And all we're right now wanting to do is to
Get some information.
information. And
And maybe we can reach out to them and see if they'd be interested in helping. too.
Underwriting it.
Yes, underwriting.
You can get private donors to support this kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
You don't necessarily have to take it out of your coffers
Mm-hmm.
if someone else wants to help pay for it.
Yes, I know that this was a lot that has been talked about throughout the election and with a lot of business owners and homeowners and everyone in the community that, yes, I have not run into anybody who was not in favor of increasing taxes. From my understanding, and this is what I understood when we met with Dr. Mackey, is that there are procedures, and I've spent 2 hours with Erica asking a lot of questions because she was the expert on it, and I did ask a lot of questions. But from my understanding, it's not just a matter of saying, hey, we want a millage or tax increase, let's put it on the ballot. That there are a lot of steps, and I, for one, we said what we were going to do, and I, for one, would rather see our school board being proactive
Right.
and saying, listen, we are all for this, and we are doing everything. I have no problem asking for money. I do it every day in my job. So to get it paid for, Lisa, I have no problem asking people, because I know that there are community leaders and business people that would help us with that. But I think that because part of that process is to have a resolution, and it's also going and talking to the city council and our county commissions. And so to be proactive and not just sit back and wait
Right.
for other entities to do this, and then here we are 5 years later,
Yeah,
and we're still talking about it, and we still only have 10 mills. So I think that we've got to be proactive, particularly with this, because everything else that we talk about, professional development, adding more teachers, supplemental payments, infrastructure, everything that we want to do is based on this. So $30,000 or $50,000 is really not going to be a lot at the end of the day when we look at it that way. I want to say one thing. And I know y'all get tired of me talking, because now I've been through a couple of meetings and I feel good about talking now. But y'all know I work at Child Protect, and in 2008, when things were really, really bad, y'all remember the economy was really bad, we started noticing that children in Chilton County were no longer coming for interviews or counseling because parents were getting laid off and they couldn't afford the gas. So I went to my board and I said, okay, I know we've laid off 2 people at Child Protect. I know that we've lost some grant money, but we need a satellite office in Chilton County and we need it like now. And they said, we don't have any money and we're not going to approve that. And I said, okay, I forgot, blame me. I forgot that our mission was to get money first and then we serve the children. And so they said, you know, we can't not do this. So the children have always got to be at the forefront. We can find the money, but we've got to remember that, and that is my story. And we saw double the children in that 6 months because of what we did. So that's all I got to say about that.
Well, let me just
Well
add to
said.
that. That was one, thank you, Jenna, for that. Because really, it's a win-win for everybody
Right.
in Montgomery County and the surrounding areas.
Absolutely.
In Montgomery, the property values go back up. You have a high-quality workforce that is coming out of MPS, and that helps the business community. Plus, if you move to any other state tomorrow, the property taxes are higher, you're going to pay them because they have high-quality schools. So in Montgomery, we're just behind, 20, 30 years behind. We're trying to catch up with what everybody else is already doing. So I think that, again, this board, the majority of us are in favor of bringing our school system forward because we don't want to be behind everybody else. Not anymore.
Well, and to look at getting the best person for the job, to help us get the job done.
That's right.
So I think the answer is please move forward and talk to
Let
this
me
guy.
clarify again, I said 30,000 as just a possibility because of timing. But that, I don't know what he would charge, that would be part of his proposal. So,
Right now, it costs us nothing to ask
and
him.
then you get to decide whether or not you
Right,
wanna go with his
right.
proposal or you wanna modify his proposal, you get to decide that. Okay, all right, so I will see if I can reach out to him and, make some contact and tell him kind of what we need and what we would like to have information from him regarding Montgomery County and how it works here.
You give us a list.
All right, so moving along, I had, and a couple of us had asked at some point in time to consider moving our meetings because of the space restrictions here. And I asked Dr. Moore, and she's got information on pros and the cons there.
Okay, so I talked to several people, but Chad Anderson gave me something in response and in writing, and then Dr. Cook over at the PSC. So, from Chad's perspective in dealing with his people, logistics, moving
One of my
things, et
favorite
cetera,
words.
security, et cetera. So from security, he said there are some difficulties in securing the PSC as opposed to the central office because of the location on the second floor, and then there are multiple entry points to get into that building. So it might be a challenge to secure that area, and it would also require more security to come and work during that time if we were there. So the other thing was, he talked to Dr. Boswell in logistics, and they have to do the setup and taking down of the equipment, et cetera. Probably would involve some overtime costs for those people who have to come in and set up tables and chairs, et cetera, and portable mic and things like that. He also said that we might have to look at purchasing more tables for board members to be housed at PSC due to the wear and tear on the tables that we currently have in the central office. So that would be another cost. And then storage is an issue. I think that's what Dr. Cook's list. The storage then would become an issue. Where do we put these tables and chairs and things like that for the board during the regular work week when they're having staff development activities. Also, there's a quote for a new portable mic system that's somewhere around $2,973. So you might as well say $3,000. Okay. Then the other thing is when Dr. Cook, from her perspective, there could not be any professional development on the day of the of the meetings, the morning after, because of all the moving around and taking down and putting up equipment. Back door is locked at 3 for safety reasons. That's back to the security issue. However, the back door is the only entrance that allows handicap accessibility. Parking lot is not lined, not fully paved. Sometimes that creates a high level of frustration if you have a lot of people there. Virtual school is housed there, so we have students and parents coming in and out at various times. And it can again become a frustration kind of a thing for security reasons. There's no storage in the building where the board tables, chairs, microphones, sound system, etc. could be stored. So those are the.
But Dr. Moore, we have, but this was before you came and before Mr. Roller came and all. We've discussed this many times, and for the same reason that you're speaking about, I think the arrangement of our tables today helps a lot, because it was the fact that our president
Is
vertically challenged like I am, and she couldn't see. But I think with the arrangement that you all have now, and the only time we have a full house when it's something controversial, and when we have groups to come in, they present, and they leave. It's just so much money and movement involved. And we hopefully will just be here for a couple of hours. But you're thinking about them having to go set up, break down, you got to pay them overtime, you got to store the things like you said. This is a win-win situation, so our staff can just come downstairs, they can work until time for, we can overwork them and they won't mind, because all they have to do is come downstairs. But I just think this is our best setup for now. Maybe when we get some more money and move out to another building, we'll thinking about you all who will be on the board then, that you need some more space, you know.
And I have to piggyback off that, in that this is the first time we can see everybody.
Right.
I requested that because I'm so short, I couldn't see everybody.
And I just know me, I feel safe here,
I do
because
too.
you gotta go through, security, it's one entrance, basically, and I've always felt safe.
Well, I have no problem. Go ahead.
Well, I think this will work, especially with a crowd like we have tonight. And when we have something in which we expect a large crowd, we should be able to use it as needed. I think that would be a better thing. And, according to the bylaws, that's what it says. If there has to be a change in the meeting, we can announce it ahead of time, and then, use that for that 1 or 2 times that we'll need it.
A larger space.
A
No,
larger
I agree. You don't know until you ask about what the.
Yeah, but we've tried everything before, and this seems to work for everybody for safety reasons, because of the entrance in and out. And then everything that we need for this building is here in this building. And it's easy to set up, it stays up or whatever. But when you're talking about overtime, talking about safety, talking about parking, and me with the bad back, talking about walking up those steps. So it's a personal thing with me as well.
Okay, well, if y'all like this, can we continue to have it?
Yeah, so what happened today was, it was pretty easy. Edward and I came down and looked at it, and we just kind of put a little split.
Well, you did a good job.
Kind of curved it just a little bit, and I sat here and said, I can see everybody. He sat down there so I could see if I could see him down there. And it just took 5 minutes of moving it just a little bit.
Just a little thought
So
process.
the other thing, I don't know, I can check this out. I don't know what the fire marshal says our limited capacity is in this building. I think it's around, 75 in this room, maybe? So there may be a time when we could add another row of chairs if we felt like we might need a little bit more.
They don't come unless it's mess.
Fire marshal's
Really?
requirements.
It's controversial stuff to bring them in, and then once they hear that, they're gone.
Unless we have something,
Unless we have a special.
Your back hurt?
Okay,
Oh,
everybody
you
good
got
with
back
that?
problems too.
all right. And
Oh,
so
I
now
didn't
we
know
know
that.
exactly how to set these
You
tables up.
need to bring your pillow like
Set
I
them
have.
up like this now. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
all right, so moving on, Strategic plan.
Okay, strategic plan, so just to kind of give you an update, we started with, we had, one that's on our website that was done, I think, at some point by a former, two interventionists back, somewhere back that way. And so it was never totally, flushed out, and it was never ever, I don't think, implemented. And so it's a different kind of a plan. So what I did was I came back in and we reviewed that one, and we reviewed one that had been done by AUM, I believe. And so first I started off with our own in-house people, department heads, etc., so that they could look at what we already had, because I knew we were gonna either rewrite, revise, or whatever to some degree. So we did that piece, and then after the in-house people, which happened to be about maybe 15 or 20 people, looked at what we already had and massaged that a little bit. Then we came back and we brought together a group of people from various entities in the community. And so Mr. Salter is gonna put those up there for us in just a minute, so you can see the people who were there, who helped us work on this. So we met one full day, October 30th, in just a minute, he'll have that up there. We met at the PSC, and we worked through some goals and some objectives that you have, some goals and some strategies that are in your package. Now, what I gave to you was just the first page that has a sample of, that goes all the way out through supporting evidence and the person responsible. The other areas, if you look at it, each goal has some strategies attached. You may have 2, 3, or 4, or 5, maybe at most, probably 5 or 6, that's about as many as you need, so that you can actually carry it out. It becomes sort of like a roadmap. And then you try to implement those things as you go along, and from time to time you revise. If you complete one step, you go back and you may add to it or revise it and continue it on until you get ready to do an entirely new one. So these are the people that I invited to help us, participate with us. So if you can see there, we have school people. We have
Those are people
from
that
junior
participated.
colleges. We have
The goals on that one.
someone from the county commission, Ms. Rose helped us with it. We had someone from the housing authority, from a church, Aldergate. We had someone from Maxwell. So we had a pretty good variety of people who helped work on these goals and these strategies. And so now, where we are is, we are waiting on the rest of the folks to give us the part that deals with supporting evidence, and how do we know if we've actually implemented some of these things that we're naming. They're not really always in sequential order. Sometimes something may happen before something else happens, even though they're listed in a particular order. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's sequential, that this has to happen before this happens. So as we work through this, then the idea is to periodically give the board an update on how we're progressing with the strategic plan, which is in your, again, in your material. And so the next step then would be to get supporting evidence for each one of these particular goals. We have 4 of them. And then the person responsible. That doesn't mean, when I say, for instance, Mr. Mitchell is responsible, doesn't mean that Mr. Mitchell has to do all of the work. He's responsible for making sure that it happens. And so he may call in other people, he should call in other people to execute some of these things that are listed as action steps. And then we'll put a timeline to it, so that within this certain time frame, certain things happen, so that it's not scattered all over the page and it takes 5 years to get one thing done. But you constantly revise it as you go, after you accomplish some of these things. So this is a basic startup. I think it would be prudent that at some point the board votes to approve what we have as a strategic plan, so that, for instance, if I say we're gonna have a certain kind of professional development, and there's a consultant that you all have to approve, that if you have a question about it, we can refer to how it fits into what we have in our strategic plan.
Could we have-
This becomes a guide for us and for the board as we try to move forward on certain things.
Could we have a copy of the people that participated? Could you
Yes.
make us a copy of that and share that with
Maybe
us?
I can do that. I can get that for you before you leave.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
And input, can we, like, as we go, and I know I've read through mine, but can we, like, send some things or ask some questions about?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. You may certainly do that.
I didn't hear that. What you
Oh, I was asking her if we could, ask questions or, maybe add some suggestions, I didn't know.
Yeah. So just send them to me and then we'll, because I'm gonna bring that group back in to review their work, so to speak. And then I can add and show them things that were made as suggestions or recommendations.
And I would say, I see a student up there, and I'm really appreciative that there's a student in there actually
Yeah.
having a voice and participating.
He did a great job, and he was dressed, and he looked very professional. And I've used students before, because that's the voice sometimes that you don't hear. And so that student stayed with us the whole time, and was a very, big contributor, actually, to the whole process. Did a lot of talking, was not ashamed to say what he was thinking to his group or out loud, so it turned out to be a very good thing.
Is there a parent represented in that group at all? I mean, because I just know there's a lot of parents, and this goes back to Dr. Eggleston. He had promised these community groups, and I know that the community has expressed several times, why have they not been included in some of these meetings?
If I'm not mistaken, we invited certain groups, including parent groups, to come and participate. And those who responded that they wouldn't be there are the ones who actually came. So there are other people there we invited who did not come. Of course, then we had Ms. Finley on there, and then there's Ms. Miller from Aldergate, who's one of our parents. And so there were parents, they didn't come as a representative of a parent group, but in their positions, and even in this, they are parents also.
Could we have anyone from the PTA?
They did not send anybody, I don't believe. I believe they were invited though, from the citywide sort of group. And so, it could have been that the time didn't work for
I can't hear.
everybody.
But did we let them know? I mean,
Of course, everybody, I mean,
aren't you president, Dina?
I'm not president of the county council.
But it
we
wasn't
sent
sent.
invitations out.
It could have been sent to someone else, so. Now, Ms. Miller is the PTA president at
Floyd.
Floyd, yeah.
How you know?
I mean, I think there are several people who are in more than one position here. Several of them are parents, including even the ones from Maxwell. They're parents, but they may not have been listed here as a parent representative, but I think we had a good representation for parents on there.
I only ask because I know that they have all these community whatevers on Facebook and whatnot, and I was surprised when I see some of those people.
So, when I go back and ask them, this group to come back, I can also go back and invite some other people to come because, even though this is just a draft right now, and we're gonna review it again, we can invite some other people to come in this next meeting, right? I'm thinking I'm trying to do, maybe the first week in February, and then we come back and look at what we put, because what we started out with was a lot of stuff on chart paper. And so we brought all the chart paper back and put it in this format. And so now we're gonna bring it to them to look at it in a very clear, concise sort of way, so that they can see exactly what it is that every group had to say. And we did report out, and they talked afterwards about what happened in each one of their groups, but now this is a different kind of format for them.
I will tell you, it's a good format. It's real easy to follow and see what the objectives are and some steps to get there.
Yeah, so if you have any comments or questions about it, just send it to me, And, you know, we'll try to incorporate that and answer your questions as we go.
One I've noticed, I mean, I think that just looking at some of those, one of those is a husband-wife team. And I mean, although that's great, it might be nice to have a little bit more diversity and move it from having two people from the same family.
Well, again, you can invite people and they have to show up, you know, that's, we don't have the
But
full list of.
again, not everybody's invited. You said that it doesn't come out. You know,
It's not a good working group to have too many people when you're trying to do something like this. And so, I mean, it may be an anomaly to have a husband and wife team on this group, but I think the cross sections of people are represented in these groups.
You
So
want to have
that
some
I
more?
think we had,
A lot central office, a lot.
well, the central office has to make it happen.
Right.
Once they, you know, so yes, I did invite them in their roles, but I think there are more outsiders per se than you have insiders on this committee.
There's a question from the audience.
Well, I will say, I know, Dr. When you said that you used the AUM strategic plan that was done years ago, the working document, and in that, I mean, that was a huge process that most of us in this room were involved in, and they used community groups from all over. So if you were using that as a working document, I think that it's still a living organism, because it represented, I mean, that was over a year of meetings at AUM, meetings at the central office, this community group, that community group, this parent group, that. So that was a very good working document.
Yeah, we reviewed that and we looked at it as
Where's the
a
husband
stepping
and wife
stone to
team?
what we came up with, so to speak.
Okay, any other discussion on the strategic plan? Mr. Watts, I believe you're up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, Madam Superintendent. I'll be very, very brief. You should have before you the financial statements for the month of November and October, and I'll mainly speak for the month of November. That's the most current. You should have contained in the financial statement the explanation of financial data, which basically provides a summary of where we are as of November 30th, 2018. I will just say that we did in fiscal year 2020, where we are for fiscal year 2019, as November fiscal year 2019. As you know, our fiscal year begins October 1st and September 30th. Therefore, we are in fiscal year 2019 now. We'll just say that we did in fiscal year 2018 with a fund balance of about $23.1 million. We had earlier projected to end fiscal year 18 with about $18.9 million. So that's about a $4 million increase. But we were able to adjust some expenditures in our general fund. Staff did a great job of moving some expenditures around, and of course we was able to free up about $4 million. So therefore, we did end with about $23.1 million in our general fund. Also, part of this financial statement is what is called a snapshot analysis, which just give a general overview in comparison of our financial data, our actual to budget, our tax revenues, payroll expenditures, and so forth. Also, the monthly budget percentages, basically states where we are as of fiscal year, as of November of the current year. November, of course, represent about 16.67% of our budget. So we can see where our expenditures really are as of there. You also have those F reports, which is the combined balance sheet and the statement of, basically the income statement, I would just say, but that's basically what it is in private industry. You also have a definition of accounting terms and the check register report. I do want to say that the superintendent and her staff is already looking at some of the adjustments that we'll need to make for fiscal year 2019. Superintendent is working on a plan right now. We are looking at a number of things that we'll have to do for fiscal year 2019. And the superintendent will be reporting to you all some of the things that we're looking at or discussing with you all, some of the things that we're looking at having to do. As you know, we projected that we'll end fiscal year 2019 with about a $10 million deficit, which would leave us with a fund balance of about $9 to $10 million. Well, we can up that a little bit, mainly because instead of ending the fiscal year with a $9 million fund balance, we ended with a $23 million fund balance. So we probably end fiscal year 2019 with about $12, $13 million fund balance instead of $9 million. But we still have a long way to go. Our 1 month fund balance requirement is about $17.9 million. That's a 1 month requirement. So we are going to have to make a look at every expenditure level, every expenditure type, and look at what adjustments we'll need to make for fiscal year 2019. However, again, the superintendent will be providing additional information as it relates to that.
Mr. Watts, in your time that you're dealing with this, I'd like to know what impact the conversion schools will have on our budget for 2019, the end of 2019. We need to have some idea how this is, when you're doing all of the scrutinizing and tweaking and changing and whatever. I need to know how the conversion schools are going to impact our budget, and we need to know that up front.
Certainly, okay.
Okay, I'd appreciate it.
Anybody got any other questions for Mr. Watts?
What is Walker Williams Johnson? What is it? It says property, Walker Williams Johnson. It says other property services. What is that?
What page?
19.
Oh, on the check register,
Yeah.
I would have to get that for you.
Okay.
There are a number of checks on here.
And Madam Chairperson, what we ask usually is when you review those, if you have a list of questions or concerns, board members, if you'll submit those to Dr. Moore, she'll get that detail for you. It's just so many during the pay period, the checks that they cut, it's just difficult to go in and remember all the specific vendors. So for the new board members, usually if you have a question about a check number or a check, you'll submit that to Dr. Moore. We'll research that and get it to you.
I personally don't need to know what checks we're writing, as long as it comes out within budget on the P&L.
As long as it adds up.
As long as it adds up right, I'm not interested. I'm not gonna get into the nitty-gritty who we're writing checks to.
I like
Now,
that.
if it doesn't, then that's another story.
Right, right.
Okay, thank you, sir. Dr. Nettles is going to talk to us about Elliott.
Good evening.
Good evening.
We're going to spend just a few minutes talking about Elliott, answering one of the questions that was posed at the December board meeting. And this is really an overview, and I do want to say, just in case anyone thinks that's a typo, Elliott should be in all lowercase letters, and that comes from advanced ed. In the past, it was all caps, and then all of a sudden they decided they wanted it to be all lowercase letters, and we like to oblige. So the Elliott instrument is an instrument that focuses on the student. It's a student observable instrument. When an evaluator
That's
or an
why I put
observer
mine
goes to a
in my
classroom,
notebook.
the focus is just on what the student is doing, because it measures the student engagement in the classroom. And when a student is engaged in their content, engaged with each other, and engaged with the teacher, then that is an example of, that active student participation is an example of how well they are learning. And so it's always interesting to see what the students are doing in response to the teacher's instruction. So the student is the focus in the Elliott instrument. The Elliott instrument is used to observe students in various learning contexts, various learning constructs, and it promotes the learner-centered classroom. The learner-centric classroom is a classroom where the students are at the forefront. They're able to make decisions, they have autonomy, they help move the instruction in the classroom further, and that also demonstrates their level of knowledge, their level of content, and their ability to engage and manipulate the content and bring it into a place of real-world activity for them. The Elliott instrument also gathers data along 7 learning environments. The Elliott is composed of 7 learning environments, 28 items, and each observation is a minimum of 20 minutes. And so you don't have to stay longer than 20 minutes, but you must stay at least 20 minutes. So there are 7 learning environments. You're one behind me, Tom. I'm sorry, this information was given to you in a folder when, at the beginning of the presentation. Okay. There are 7 learning environments. There is the equitable learning environment. And when you talk about equitable learning, you're looking to ensure that every student has an ability to succeed. And they do that with, and that's about the differentiated learning opportunities. So a lot of times, just like you all have questions because there's always a different level of understanding, when a teacher is able to provide that differentiated learning, address students where they are, it increases their ability to achieve and succeed in that content area. We're also looking for high expectations. How well do students strive to meet the teacher's high expectations? A lot of times teachers say, well, I have high expectations, but it's not about the teacher, it's about the student and how well they are adjusting to and addressing and seeking those higher expectations. The supportive learning environment is about how well students receive assistance from the teacher, peers, and additional resources. So when you talk about a child taking risks, we all know that as we grow up and we mature, we're more apt to answer questions. But when you talk about students in that K-12 age group, a lot of those students don't feel comfortable asking questions. They don't want to be picked on, they don't want to be singled out. But a classroom that has a high level of supportive learning allows a child to feel comfortable asking questions, seeking information, and even leading discussion. And that's very important in a child's individual learning and academic growth. And then there's active learning, whether or not students are engaged with the teacher and with other students, and how well they collaborate. As teachers, a lot of times we think our content is our content, but really it's the students' content and how well they know their content. So for me to continue to talk and talk and talk and talk as a teacher only demonstrates how much I know. And so when a student can demonstrate how much they know and present that collaboration in the classroom, then you have evidence of active learning and indeed supportive learning. Yes, there's 3 more. Then there is progress monitoring. Progress monitoring is how well students respond to teacher feedback. We are consistently working with teachers about progress monitoring because it's not the test at the end of the unit or the test at the end of the week. It's how well we're understanding content within that time frame in which we're teaching. A well-managed learning environment has to do with how well students speak and respect each other and the teacher in that classroom, and how well they demonstrate knowledge of classroom rules. And I love this historical point for me, because the first time I saw an elementary classroom and 2 students started walking around, I thought, wait a minute, what are you doing, where are you going? And somebody had to tell me, stop a minute and watch. And every child knew where they were supposed to go. And that's a well-managed learning environment. And they went to that next station and they began to engage in their content. Then there is also digital learning. When you hear digital learning, we're still transitioning our thought process, but digital learning is not there is a computer in the classroom, there's a smartboard in the classroom. It's how well students use those digital tools to interact with content and create original work and create work that reflects a real world experience. We can draw and go to the computer games all day long, we do it on our phone. But we're not creating any original content and we're not engaging in the content that way. So digital learning has more to do with how well their students are able to solve the problems that are provided to them. And it's, there's a lot of critical thinking involved with digital learning, not just being able to sit at the computer and push buttons. Did I talk too fast talking about those 7 learning environments? Everybody good?
Yeah, we're
All right.
good.
You also have in your folder a copy of the Elliott instrument. You have a different version of that instrument from before, but this is the instrument, this is the copy that's on the Advanced Ed website, but I wanted you to be able to see it broad, so that you could see it with enough space to actually be able to understand it and interpret it. You also have a ratings guide in your folder. When you are sitting in a classroom for 20 minutes and you're trying to watch all the students and what they're doing and the content they're engaged in, there are 4 factors that should be considered when you're looking at the Elliott, when you're using the instrument. One is whether or not the activities are routine and systemic. How well do the students understand the classroom practice? And how familiar are they with that classroom practice? And just like I talked just a moment ago about the students getting up and moving, you can tell when students are not familiar with their rotation, because they'll stand in the middle of the room and go, where am I supposed to go? And they'll talk to each other, where am I supposed to go? And then they'll follow each other, and groups will split, and then you'll have a child sitting in the wrong group. And so you can quickly tell whether or not the activities they engage in are routine and systemic. The quality of the application is the application of that context, complex or simple. When you talk about equitable learning, whether or not a student can participates in differentiated learning, is that a complex activity or is it simple? Is it just a matter of asking students simple questions, or are the students able to ask themselves questions, ask each other questions, and engage in the content that way? So the quality of the application of that content area must also be addressed. The quantity of students applying them. How many students are applying the context? We always call the ones on the front row because they seem to always know the answers. But are the students in all aspects of the room participating in that context and participating in that lesson? So the quantity of students applying is also critical. And the frequency of application. How frequent is the application of the context? How many times does something happen in the classroom where the students are engaged and the students are carrying the content, so that you know that this is something that they do routinely, that they are aware of what should happen? And then the ratings are on a scale from 4 to 1, very evident, evident, somewhat evident, and not observed. So in the course of that 20 minutes, there's a lot going on for the observer and for the students, but this should help you see how the scores are developed.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody good?
All right, is there a mandatory 20 minutes?
Yes, ma'am. That comes from Advanced Ed. The mandatory minimum is 20 minutes. In fact, when you are using the Advanced Ed engine, you will not get a completed observation, rating and score unless you complete 20 minutes.
Are the teachers becoming more adapted to this?
Yes, ma'am.
You know, change is difficult, but, you know, they should be kind of moving into what you expect.
They are doing Elliott. We've increased our usage of Elliott over the last 2 to 3 years, and so many of them are comfortable with it.
Okay.
But we'll talk about the training of that in just a moment.
Okay.
So based on the Elliott and the expectation, and based on the Elliott and what you've heard so far, there are expectations. So let's talk about the slide that I forgot. Advanced Ed's expectations. Advanced Ed expects us to use the Elliott instrument as a means of moving instruction and student engagement along the course of not just the year that we are monitored, but
Right.
all years, because it increases the engagement of students.
That's a good
MPS
thing.
expectations expects that all staff will be trained. All principals, assistant principals, curriculum and instructional supervisors at the central office, select members of the central office student support area have been trained. And they have been trained at least twice. All of them are Elliott 2.0 certified. That means they've gone through the training with advanced ed, they've gone through the online training, and they have a certificate that is 2 years, that will grant them 2 years of applicable, it's a certification, so they're certified for 2 years.
Are these announced? No. Are they
Elliott?
announced visits or not?
They can be announced or not.
And I guess the reason I'm asking, is it really fair? I mean, let's just say a teacher was given a test, or let's say a teacher where you walk, or a teacher was, you know, engaged in lecture, and that 20 minutes, you're only grading on that specific thing. She doesn't have the awareness. You're not gonna be able to see teacher, I mean, I know you're not grading the teacher.
Right.
I know that. But let's just say you walked in when a test was given. Let's say that you walked in, your 20 minutes is watched, and you don't see that. How do you have
Your
that
20
kind of
minutes start
time
when you start
to
doing.
really get a good picture of it?
Elliott is not a requirement, it is an expectation. So if I were to walk in and it was a test, and I walked in at the beginning of the test period, and there was not an opportunity for student engagement, I probably wouldn't stay, because this
Okay.
is not a
So
required.
common sense, you would probably
Right.
try to leave. Okay.
Now, with respect to your second question, this really is about student engagement. So if a teacher is lecturing, we already have not addressed equitable learning, because just talking to me does not mean that I always understand. So there's no differentiated instruction. There's no supportive learning, because there's no interaction or collaboration with peers. There's no active engagement, because I'm just listening as a student. So if a principal or an observer walks in and for 20 minutes there is nothing but lecture, then that's an opportunity for the principal or whoever that observer is to coach up that teacher in differentiating instruction for that class. So it's actually a great learning opportunity if that happens, but we really are trying to move our teachers away from just lecturing.
Yeah.
Certainly lecture is a teaching tool, but it is not the only teaching tool that enhances student learning.
And a 20-minute
Did I
lecture.
answer that?
You do, but I guess, you know, I'm just telling you, I'm a born teacher, and I believe when you know, I feel like you've got to, in order to capture that attention of that class, you've got to have a variety of activity.
Absolutely.
Okay, a variety, and in a given day, I've probably got, and I'm not exaggerating, 5 to 6. You know, but of course I have 2-hour time period for
Right.
my class, okay? And you could very well walk in when I have YouTube on. Now, the longest YouTube video I have is typically 8 minutes, okay? But you happen to walk in, there's 8 minutes that they're getting something that I'm about to engage them in a lesson on. So I just feel like, I don't know, we've got to have instruments, but to me, when I've looked over this, you know, they've done this with me, I'm fine with it, but I just question the validity and reliability of the you know.
May I add something to this?
Yes.
If I walk in, if I'm doing an Elliott, and I walk in and you're lecturing, I'm gonna see how
Bless
you
you.
carry out that lecture. Are you just talking and that's it, or are you really involving the kids in the lecture? Or if you're doing a YouTube video, I might sit there and watch the YouTube video with you for 8 minutes, and then I'll start
Okay, gotcha.
watching your follow-up
Do that. Okay,
activities
good.
after that YouTube video ends. And then I would look for these other things after that.
Yeah.
I'm not the teacher, but it certainly seems to me that this is a good teachable moment for teachers.
And it's ongoing, it's not like a one-shot deal, because, you know, on any given day, something could be different. So over a period of a year, you would have more than, if we use this.
More
enough,
opportunities.
More opportunities.
Dr. Meadows?
Yes, ma'am.
I thank you. I had lots of notes when I was looking at the strategic plan, but when I look at the Elliott,
Yes, ma'am.
and I see, you know, that we're data informed, we have differentiated learning, and, you know, these are the look-fors that we'll be looking for.
Yes, ma'am.
So thank you for the opportunity to participate. I will be, you know, sending it, I know you probably already are headed in that direction, but I've already made about 2 pages of notes, so I'll send them to you and hopefully cut down on a little work. But I'm excited. This is beautiful and very inspiring. Thank you.
So, and someone spoke about training just a moment ago. All staffs have been trained. All staff should have been trained prior to the Elliott Street that was conducted during the first quarter. And this is not the first time that school staff have been trained. They were trained last year also. So, like you're saying, Ms. Bryce, the more we use, the more familiar and comfortable they're becoming with the process. Additional MPS expectations, is there anything? Yes, that there are Elliott observations in classrooms. Administrative staff conduct routine Elliott observations in classrooms, and that data is used to inform instruction and professional development in the building. We talked in November about the art of engagement training, because that was on the board agenda, but the art of engagement training was a training that allowed a school team, a team of 2, to come in and get that training. What that training did was talk about the learner-centered classroom. It talked about all of the environments of the Elliott instrument and how you create that in a classroom, what it looks like in a classroom. And all schools were to turn that training around to their faculties, and that was done at the end of the first quarter. And so we were looking at the documentation to make sure that that actually happened. That has happened in most schools, and any school that has not completed has allowed me to know when they're actually going to do it. Everyone will have completed this training by the end of the month.
I'm really excited. I'm like Dr. Coleman. I'm really excited about this.
Well, let's have some more excitement.
Don't give it too much at one time.
These are our Elliott schools.
My heart might not take it.
So we talked briefly about them in November, but here are the actual numerical scores. And so we're still talking about a rating of 4 being very evident and 1 being not evident or not observed. And I want you to take a moment to see the October scores. Our area of concern is digital learning, but that is a national area of concern.
1.62.
And supportive learning and well-managed learning are 2 of our high points. And we talked about that previously. And of course, there were over 1,000 Elliott observations completed. Let's go to December. Just 2 months. We completed 724 Elliott observations. And I pulled that data from the advanced data engine. But look at our scores. There have been some increase in scores.
Even in the digital learning.
Yes, ma'am. So if you go one more slide, Mr. Salter, there's the comparison. So we are making a difference. The teachers are making a difference. They're hearing, and they are implementing in their classrooms. And this should become evident at the end of the school year with another round of assessments where we're beginning to make a difference.
Can these be done in are these done in every classroom?
There is no requirement to do them in every classroom, but some principals have actually made it their mandate to do one in every classroom.
And I would say over time,
Yes,
Yeah.
we'll more than likely eventually get into your classroom more than once during the school year.
And as other teachers see what's happening in other classrooms, they want to be a part of it to see success, because this is showing a measure of success.
Yes, ma'am.
In some schools, I was talking to one principal, they actually have decided as a staff that some teachers will go into other teachers' rooms and even look to see.
But that's peer
review.
we talked about observation
So
at
these
ASB.
We're trying to develop some processes that we can use as backdrops for the kind of professional development we need. What are we seeing in the classroom? What are some of the areas that we could strengthen across the board, across the system? And of course, this all fits into the student achievement, student accountability kind of acts that we're addressing that at this time, one of our deficits, we want to strengthen people. So we're giving them ways to do that, and we're trying to help them and give them the resources that they need to go along with it.
Can I ask, since we're not going into all the classes, how do you select the schools and the grade level to go into?
For the Elliott sweeps we ended up doing all schools, but the 724 scores, those are scores based on what individual schools are doing. And so in that time frame, individual schools, individual teams of within those schools are going into classrooms, and they're going into that many classrooms.
Okay, awesome.
And also, when the advanced ed team comes in, they may choose a school, and they may choose, not every class in a school, not every classroom, but a smidgen of, or 20, or whatever, depending on how many. And then we won't know exactly where they're gonna go, but they'll go, they will at times go into schools and conduct the same observation that we're talking about.
I want to say one of the things that we looked at is our accountability areas are actually math and reading language arts. So for the sweeps, we focused on those two areas.
Oh, good, good.
We're held accountable as far as So that's where we started. Now, of course, have we gone into science classrooms and the others? We have, but we thought that it would be great to focus on where we're held accountable.
Right,
To see
right.
what things are happening in the classroom so we can actually help other teachers, or even just take a good look at ourselves to see why our test scores here. What are kids doing? What can we do differently with kids in those classrooms so we can impact entire district?
And that same discussion is going on in schools when they do their Elliott sweeps or their Elliott visits in the classrooms at schools. That same exact discussion, how can we create the same synergy in one classroom and replicate it over classrooms? Did I answer your question?
Yes, yes, thank you.
Okay, so what can this be attributed to? All of our principals, again, are Elliott 2.0 certified. Principals have trained their coaches, their lead teachers, the teachers are training each other. Curriculum and instruction staff are providing strategic support as upon request or based on the data that's being provided. Staff have cross-trained each other for concept of digital learning and technology integration.
Let me ask you this, is there a breakdown per school that we could see, since you did all the schools, can we not see a breakdown per school of each school? Because I know, I get complaints from schools that have brought them here that are missing out on certain features and stuff like that. So I'm wondering, you know, if I wanted to correlate a school, traditional schools, just to see how they correlate with each other. Is there not a break, I mean, if you did them all, did somebody take the time to break them down per school?
We do have some breakdowns, and I think, without handing it to you tonight, I would tell you.
Oh, no, I'm not
that-
asking, I'm just saying, I'd like to see, because I just would like to compare.
Yeah, I think
schools.
I think you're gonna be surprised when you look at some traditional school versus some others and how they pan out on these observations as far as student engagement is concerned. So we can,
So where is this leading to, I mean, I get it, and I'm glad we do it. Where does this lead us into achievement? Where does this help? Does this help at all?
well,
with
the
achievement?
idea is that if the student is engaged in the learning, that his academic performance will increase, as opposed to a teacher who lectures all the time. And there are students who just won't ever raise their hand, don't ask any questions, they never say anything. So developmentally appropriate kinds of activities, even with young children or children who are older, hands-on, active involvement, active engagement in the learning, typically you're gonna get higher results as far as students are concerned, as opposed to a student who's even in elementary school where the teacher lectures to him all day. He's missing a lot because he's not actively engaged in the learning. So our thought process is that we're going to implement some strategies
We're gonna give you some information where you can understand as a teacher, as a principal, as a curriculum person that we're looking for. My thing that I say to everybody all the time is trust but verify. So we give you some professional development in certain areas, and then we come out and we check to see if you're actually implementing those things over time.
Okay, well, answer this, and it's sort of like what Janice said. Janice said, how do you pick these schools, whatever? Y'all said you do every school, okay? Well, do you do every classroom?
No, ma'am, like Ms. Gillis stated, when we did the Elliott Suites, we focused on reading and math. What some schools are doing are choosing reading and math. Did I say reading and math? Okay. Some schools are doing.
Okay, so here's
some schools are focusing on reading and math, and some schools are focusing on grade level. Because if I can turn around instruction in the 9th grade, then that cohort of students will move to the 10th grade at a better support level. And so it depends on what a school determines their need to be, how they're going to focus their energies on the Elliott Suites. I had one school who was focusing on science because they found the deficit in the science area. So all of the science classes across the school were doing Elliott Suites that month. Does that make, so
it does, but I guess
Train the trainer. I think that's how I look at it. It's a train the trainer. You got the teacher and you have people who are observing who are saying, you know, man, you did this really great, but you could have engaged over here. So it's a.
Okay, but I'm asking this, okay, let's just say, the superintendent, where you said that, you know, hey, you know, I've got common sense enough to walk in, if somebody's doing YouTube, to wait and see how they engage. What about when you walk into that class and they're all over the place? You know, and the kids aren't learning yet.
Well, that's part of
Do you walk out or do you actually?
No, I may stay and watch that and say to the principal, I was in classroom A and here's what I saw. And so the principal, I'm the superintendent, I do observations, but I'm not gonna go in there and say to that teacher, this is what I saw when I was in here. I'm gonna share that with the leader in the school. And then the principal.
But will it reflect on your Elliott?
Yeah, you know, if they're all over the place, you know, I'm gonna have a way of saying from 1 to 4 where you are in certain things, and I'm gonna share that information with the principal. Now, if it's beyond, if it's like, this teacher has no classroom management skills at all, that is also gonna be part of what I'm gonna share with the principal. I could not do the Elliott because of the classroom management issue going on, but I may stay the 20 minutes, try to do an Elliott, but when I go talk to the principal, I'm gonna say, I wasn't really able to really conduct a good, observation because of this other issue that I saw in that classroom.
So you really can only conduct an Elliott on classes that are gonna be cooperative.
Well, it's student engagement. How well have I, let me say it this way, how well have I, as a teacher, starting out at the beginning of the year, had my students to learn the process and the procedures for how we do this? For instance, if you know, there have been classrooms that I've walked in as a principal where the teacher is starting to do something, and the kids say, teacher, why are you doing this today? You told us we were just gonna be quiet out there and read a book. The kids try to tell the teacher, but if they know, and this is something they've been doing all the time, and it's been organized that way, when you walk in to do the Elliott, then you see it. The kids know what to do, where to go, you know, how to get help, whatever it is they need to do, they know how to do that. But that's a learning process from the beginning. The teacher has to help them understand, this is how we operate in this classroom.
You get signals to move.
Am I?
I was trying to decide, you know, mess it up.
Oh, okay.
So what are our next steps? Curriculum and instruction is collaborating with schools to make sure that they address those two critical areas, supportive learning and high expectations. And they're also conducting system level mini sweeps. And once those mini sweeps are done, that Elliott data will be input into the system, and it will also provide feedback and guidance. And just like Dr. Moore was saying, the Elliott does us no good if all you do is collect the data, unless you go back and interact with that teacher, that principal, that administrator, to say what was good and how can we make improvements. That's what makes Elliott such a sweet deal. PD has also asked every school to identify the 2 learning environments that they would like professional development support with, and those activities will be developed for spring and summer of 2019. And educational technology is working to, they've already started theirs, and they're doing site-based technology integration training, because the definition of technology integration has more to do with creating opportunities for students to interact with the content and the computer than just as an administrative tool. So those are the next steps with Elliott. Are there any other questions, concerns?
I did have one. The games are wonderful. You really do see the labor of the work of the teachers, so I applaud them for all of that hard work. I know it's a ton of work to get it done, but I'm sure that they're managing well. One of the things I did want to ask is, as we were looking at the scores, where do we want to be by the end of this school year? Where do we want our scores to fall?
So it's,
I mean, you know, as we're making the increases, where are we looking at where we can say, okay, you know, like, where's our benchmark from there, I guess, if they have said.
I understand your question, but I'm going to step out on a limb and say that's not the way Elliott works.
Oh, okay.
It's not, we're not looking for a target area. We're looking for that incremental increase that allows students to engage and be comfortable and successful in their content. Because an Elliott is a snapshot in time. So today when you come to my classroom, I may be lecturing and YouTubing and doing things, so my scores may not be that elevated. But tomorrow when you come in, or next week when you come in, my follow-up activity is student stations, and students are now driving the curriculum, and so my scores are going to look different.
No, I know you explained it well. I just didn't know if that was something that we should be looking at. What? I was wondering if that was something that I should be looking at. I'm like, are we trying to get somewhere? But the overall thing is to just get the perspective.
You know, actually, I just want to say that, you know, when we think about getting somewhere is where we're teaching our students how to think logically and solve problems. And to me, this is an excellent tool in assisting teachers, in teaching them how to teach thinking and problem-solving skills. And also the students learning a positive way to learn how to think logically and solve problems. And that's what I see this tool as, helping the students to get into that area of thinking and solving problems.
Thank you, Dr. Knowles. That's really a great report, thank you. Another item that I asked Dr. Moore to address was, it was recommended to us by the state superintendent, I think, that we consider our own attorney. So.
Okay, so here's where we are now. We've advertised since, early December again?
Well, even before then.
And before then it was open. And so there was a non-attorneys, but we understand a lot about the law of attorneys, but not too many want to come here. But we understand that the law and not things are supposed to work. So in looking at the pool, we're kind of reviewing that, and we may have 2 viable candidates at this time. We would love to have a day where you come and maybe interview 3 or 4. And then, so hopefully within the next week or so, we'll have a good little tool for you to interview. I would say to you, as you interview attorney candidates, that a lot of what we do from a legal perspective has to do with special ed, 504, and sometimes personnel, and some of those things. So we need to have people who understand all of that. And so we'll design some questions for you. We'll also take, hopefully, good notes, because we've had to deal with all those issues over the years. And we kind of know a good deal about how that works also. But, so we have an open ad out there. We have 2 viable candidates at this time. It's from what? Search song.
Yeah, search,
Search.
stop.
Search song.
You go to the Alabama State Department of Education website, and it tells you how to get there. When you go to the NPS website, and you say join NPS, and it'll lead you how to get there.
Okay, so hopefully within the next few weeks, we can bring somebody to you, because we have a lot of issues of legal contract kind of things coming up that we have to deal with. And, of course, you know, we've been using a firm to review certain things, so we have not been without, but if we have an in-house person, under the circumstances, they can look at it, quickly. We can just walk in, knock on the door and say, hey, take a look at this. So that's where we're at with that.
Moving right along.
Yes, we are. Move right along.
Our education procedures
Okay,
revision.
so you have in your documents, in your folder, you have, some procedures that they're sort of formal but informal, not necessarily always based on the law, but these are kind of like what I like to call bylaws about how the board operates. So what I'd like for you to do is look at them and send me any potential revisions that you see coming out of this, and then we'll work on revising it for you and then bringing it to you with any revisions that you see or that we see may be a good way to carry out the business.
Just right off, I could send it, but the first page,
Ma'am?
on the first page, it needs to be revised,
Yes, we
6 before.
Yeah, and, you know, anything you see in there, just, you know, scratch through it, and you can just scratch through it and send it to me with your notes, and then we'll try to take everybody's, it doesn't have to be anything great and wonderful. You can scratch through it, you can send it to me, and we'll try to revise the document.
And Dr. Moore, we've had so many organizational charts.
Oh, yeah.
Send out the notes to you on this.
Yes, and I'm gonna bring that to you, I actually have an updated possibility that it's gonna come to you on the 29th.
Okay.
So this is in there, but that's not it. Yes, sir, what we even have today.
Okay, so the next meeting is Tuesday, January 29th at 5 o'clock here. Unless somebody's got anything else, they just, the burning desire, I would say it's time to go home.
And thank you for, doing a done job tonight. We had a lot to cover, and you were able to cover it, and you had a lot of editorial notes that came with this, and we on our way.
One is and one is.
Call you back about
I'll be headed to DC.